And now we're live with Kathy Cassidy. And Kathy and I have been intersecting at a whole bunch of technology and education conferences for a number of years now. And she's been my inspiration. I've led so many elementary educators and librarians and administrators to her blog and to her classes activities. But I'm going to have her introduce herself for us. Kathy, would you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I teach grade 1 in a place called Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan, Canada. And it's a city of about 35,000 people. But even though our city is small, because my classroom is tied with the world, I'm able to give my students a global perspective as I teach literacy, which is really what grade 1 or first grade is all about, is teaching literacy. So I teach reading and I teach writing and I teach math, but the tools that I have in my toolbox to do that don't just include math manipulatives and the books in my classroom. They include experts from around the world. They include other classrooms that are learning the same thing as us and help us to learn things, and whom we can help to teach about our lives and about the things that we know. So I do that in a variety of ways. I'll just briefly list some of them. One of the ways you do that is through the use of Twitter. My classroom has its own Twitter account, and almost 100% of the tweets are composed by the students on that account. Sometimes I'm the scribe, but most of the time it's the students themselves who are writing the tweets. Sometimes they write the tweets because it's something that's interesting in our classroom that they want to share, or sometimes we talk about something in a general sense and they want to put it on Twitter. For example, this past week, I don't know when you're seeing this, but Amy Krauss Rosenthal passed away this past week, and she is a tremendous author and of children's books, and my children have loved her books. And so my students decided they wanted to say something nice about her and to her. And so we used the medium of Twitter to do that. And so the students were composing, talking about the different things that she had meant to them in terms of what stories they had liked, and saying things that would probably be nice for a family to see. And that's just one example of ways that we have done that. We use Twitter for traditional literacy in that I can project my computer onto the wall, and the students use that as our reading and writing when we're doing a group sense of doing that. And instead of the traditional poems that I still have collected that I wrote on chart paper and for my students to read together, we now read tweets for the most part, and other online things, but something that's written by other kids, something that's written to my students. It's much more authentic for them. And oh my goodness, they are so delighted when they find that somebody has made a mistake, that they have forgotten to put a period or a capital letter. And that is such a joy for them to see that other people forget the things that they are learning about in our language studies. We also have our own blogs. So I have a blog in which I blog about things that are happening in my classroom, but each of the students...
What's your Twitter? What do your students tweet under? What's the name that people should look for?
It's at Ms. Cassidy's class.
At Ms. Cassidy's class. And your blog is
mscassidysclass.edublogs.org.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
So I'm sorry I interrupted you. So you were introducing your blog.
Right. So I, of course, blog about the things that happen in my classroom, and I put pictures on the blog. So it's my main audience that I'm writing towards is the parents of the students, and I want them to know what's happening and see what little glimpses of what was happening in our classroom. But beyond that, I want my students to have their own portfolios, and so they have their own blogs that are attached right on to my blog, and EduBlog just does that for us automatically. And then they are able to use that as a portfolio of their work. Now, depending on the year and my students' abilities then that particular year and what their interests are, we post different things. For example, we might post samples of our writing. We might post samples of our reading fluency. We might post, for example, we were learning about First Nations people, so and how they use the different parts of the buffalo. And I had some artifacts in the classroom. They took pictures of those, used an app called Book Creator to actually make a little movie about the things they're learning, so that they could share those with those parents, and really with their whole world they could share those things with, because anyone, it's not locked down, and anyone can go and access and see what the kids are learning about. And beyond that, anyone can comment. Comments have become another kind of reading in our classroom, where it's something written for the students in particular or for our classroom. And they, again, love to read those things that are written just to them. And it's our group reading. Another way in which I use technology in the classroom is through Skype or Google Hangouts or some other means of connecting in that way. We have had in experts to help with different subjects, questions that we wondered about, a nurse, if it's something about our bodies, or we've connected with a geologist, or even other kids if we want to know about their community in a place that's far away from ours, or even that's not so far away but it's different than ours. It's quite a bit smaller or quite a bit bigger. We have used it to connect with other classrooms, and with other classrooms sometimes we just learn about them, or in other times we actually play literacy games or play math games with them to help my students to build those skills in whatever it is. For example, one of our favorites is Guess My Number. So we will pick a number between 1 and 100, and the other class will pick a number between 1 and 100. And then we have to try to guess their number by making guesses about what it is. Now, is it better to say, is it 9? Or is it better to say, is it an odd number? And as we play that game, the students get better at guessing the number more quickly. And then, of course, we have a chart that is off camera that we are taking off the numbers that it can't be, that are helping us to guide our questions. And so is the other classroom. So that's pretty fun as well. So just a little snapshot of some of the things that we are doing.
So as I started stepping back from what you were saying and thinking about it, there are some literacies there that are beyond the notion of numeracy and writing and traditional literacy. So there is a lot going on relating to empathy and understanding other humans, and how do we go into the world and be kind and giving people. So I'm seeing that in the responses to the author's passing, consideration of that, the author's family, learning how to have conversations with other people online. All of those things are things that are kind of maybe an unintentional curriculum, or maybe an intentional curriculum.
Yeah, when I first started doing this, I don't think that I thought of it as, I just thought of it as, well, this would be kind of a cool thing to do. But as I began to use these tools and saw the different literacy skills that it's teaching my students, we have a map up in our classroom, for example, and we put a little colored tack on it every time there's another class that we happen to connect with via Twitter or via Skype, or somebody that comments from someplace in the world. And then they're getting such a sense that really the world is their audience. I'll tell you a little story of something that happened. This was many years ago when we first started connecting. We were connected with Amanda Marinen's class in Brisbane, Australia. And during January one year, we came to school, and I had seen this on the news, but the students brought it up themselves. They said, there's flooding in Brisbane, Australia. What if our buddies that we blog with, what if they're not okay? And in January, there's no school. in Brisbane, and so we couldn't connect with the class in that way. But I was able, through Twitter, we contacted the teacher, and she was able to get back to us and say, don't worry, everyone in our school is safe. It's in a different part. And she sent us links to different um, uh, videos and stuff that had been online, so that we could see more about what the flooding was like, and the students were in awe of this. And it's just that global empathy, that global literacy, that these people are part of our learning network. They think of them in the same way as they think of the kids in the classroom next door. They know them just as well, because they've talked to them, and they've learned with them. And so that kind of literacy, the whole idea of how you are polite online and what would be the right things to do. We talk about that. Some teachers talk about it before they do it, and I do a little bit about that, but more of it comes as we're doing it, because I'm modeling how to write before they've learned to write. And so I'm modeling what would be something polite we could say to that class. What would we want to say to them about whatever it is that they've been doing, when we're tweeting to them or when we're commenting? What would we want to say? How would we want to say it? And why would we want to say that in that way? So that we're learning to do this while the children are still young, and before they get to the stage where what their friends think is much more important. When they're already involved in this, and it's too late to start to set those ground rules for them. And honestly, some of the best teaching moments have come when someone who has accidentally made a mistake. So the rule in the classroom is you don't I see every comment before it goes online. But tweets, they're allowed to tweet from the iPads, but I have to see it before it goes on. And sometimes the students have accidentally tweeted without me seeing it. And sometimes those tweets have had magical moments of learning because someone has responded to it in a kind way to say, the world is watching you. And my students have been appalled at what people are thinking of them, and they wanted us to delete the tweets and to go back to thinking about this before we tweet that.
Kathy, that's so important. And what I think you're demonstrating for these kiddos is that your language has impact. You communicate, you write, not for the sake of handing a worksheet back to your teacher to make sure that your letters are straight or follow a model format. We write for purpose, and we write for others. And so, first grade, how does that transform the way you look at writing? I'm not sure. I wonder if you have any thoughts about that.
If I'm writing in a notebook that only my teacher is going to see, I saw this quote online, you want it to be good enough. But if I'm writing for the whole world that might possibly see, I want it to be good. I want my best work there. And so the students do, if I give them, I'll occasionally give choices like, do you want to write in your book or do you want to write? And when they want to write on the blog, because they might get a comment, because other people might see that, that's so important to them. It's very motivating, and it shows them that they have a purpose in actually doing that writing, as opposed to, we just do a lot of writing in this book. And it's not that we don't.
So you really
we do. That's important too. That whole, how do you hold a pencil? How do you make marks on paper that make sense to other people? That's important. But so is the digital.
Kathy, are you the only grade 1 teacher at Moose Jaw?
Moose Jaw? No, there's several schools. There's 35,000.
Well, you said it's a very small town, so I just wanted to make sure. So, are you seeing a difference in the first graders? Are there more first grades in your building, or grade 1s in your building?
There is one other grade 1 classroom, yes. And
are you
that other classroom? The teacher has now has a blog. It has begun blogging since I have as well. It's unfortunately not carrying over into the grade 2 classrooms at this point. And every teacher is different. They have different ideas about how they want to run their classroom. And so, as the teachers change, that may change too. So
yeah, absolutely. So are you following these kids as they move forward? What's the impact of your work? Are
Um,
they looking,
that's really
and you've been
difficult.
there a long enough time to see
Yes,
some
yes.
older students respond.
Yes, some of the students that I first taught in grade 1 are beyond school now. So that means that even the students in grade 8 are still, they were the ones that were in my class. They still remember about it, and they talked to me about it and said, "Oh, I remember how we used to do that." And what I've discovered this year is that they have always been going online and looking back at the videos that we created, because we do make videos as well, sometimes more than others. And they're watching themselves in grade 1 as they share their learning on my YouTube channel. And they love to do that. The other thing that's a very positive thing that happens is that I have some kids who, once they're out of my class, become very strong commenters on the students' blogs. It tends to be certain students that remember and go back every year to maybe some of the kids that they know, or they remember what it's like to get that comment. And so even though they're not blogging maybe in the classroom that they are in, they go online, they go to my blog, and they are commenting on the students' blogs. So I think that is a fabulous thing.
So have you had any pushback on these activities, either at the administrative level or the parent or from parents? And if you have, how have you justified what you're doing in terms of the learning environment?
So I started doing this before there was any real, because I've been doing it so long, nobody had even thought that, oh, it might be bad to post things online when we started posting. But I do have a couple of rules that I follow. And one is, even though I publish the pictures of the students with the parents' permission, I will never identify those students by name. And on the students' blog, you'll see what their name is, but you'll never see a picture that identifies them. So you can't identify the students, but you'll know, yes, they live in Moose Jaw, and you could find out which school it was at if you were diligent online. But you are not going to know, you're not going to know who is what student. So I promised the parents that, and I promised the parents also that I will watch what's put online, that nothing gets posted on the blog unless I see it first, and that the tweets are supposed to be seen by me first, and then occasionally one slips by, but then I've checked after school or whatever, and it gets deleted, and then the student's name is not associated with that, and generally anyway. So those are the things that I have done. And then once it started to be a little bit of a concern, I'd already been doing this for a while, and so the administration, I've got to say, has always been supportive in that nobody has ever said, Kathy, you have to stop this, or you have to do this. They've always known that I have my students' safety at first, and so they have not been protesting in any way about that. And I've had very few parents who were not 100% on board. The first year I blogged, I had one parent who didn't want her child's picture included on the blog, and I was fine, just, won't be any pictures. Now by Christmas, that parent, had come to me and said, I see that you're being careful. I would like my child's picture to be on. I have had other parents who have voiced concerns. I think of one year in particular that parent was very adamant that the internet was a scary place and didn't want her child there. And she didn't really listen to what I was saying as I was trying to say, this is how I protect. But another parent in the classroom who had an earlier student in my class, I'm really glad my child is in Mrs. Cassidy's classroom, because this is a way that we can see into the classroom that I don't have in any other of my children's classes. And all of a sudden that parent was just fine with it. So they have been my advocates. This year, for the first time, I have a student who the parent does not want her picture on, and that's fine too. She's fine with her first name. If first name was a problem, we would use a pseudonym, but nobody's ever wanted to do that. So I would say, perhaps it's because we're in a smaller center, but the parents have all been fine with it. Blogging is what we do, and and that's a way that we share our learning, and it's how we learn. So if a parent had a problem with it, I would sit down with them and say, okay, what can I put in place for you? We don't have to put their picture on. We can use a pseudonym so that nobody will know that your child is associated with my class. What can we do to make this work for you?
So it sounds to me like you've incorporated the authentic tools that real people use to communicate with online. And I'm wondering if, in addition to things like Twitter and blogging, um, you incorporate any other technologies in your grade one classroom. Are there types, not necessarily individual things, but maybe types of tools that you think promote literacy for younger children?
For sure. Okay, so while you're talking about technologies, I should mention that what I discovered is that the majority of my parents are not on the blogs themselves per se. They need nudges, but most of them seem to be on Facebook now. So I also developed a Facebook page, and then every time I post on my blog, or when the kids have posted something on their blogs, then I put something on the Facebook page, and the parents link to it on their device through that. So that's another technology I use. I am a big fan, although we do use a few, we have some iPads in our classroom, and so we do use a few things that are just great books, or just great for when you're learning to spell words. The things that I really favor are creation tools. We've tried many of them in my classroom. What I do find works best for my students, they love to make movies with the iPads. They love to use like Book Creator, or just even iMovie to make a book or a little video to share, to take a picture of what they've learned and to talk about it, or to make a video about what they have made. Those are the kind of things that I really favor. I like things where they're creating, not just regurgitating or responding to something that somebody else has set up. I like them to create something digitally, or create something out of pencil, paper, and markers, and then to make a digital artifact that saves that and that we can put onto their blog.
So that stuff is all connected to the blog. So you're communicating out. The audience continues to be outside of the classroom as well as the classroom itself.
Yes, yes.
So these open-ended creating tools that you favor.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
we have tried Google Docs. We tried using that at one point, and it had a good result. That was earlier in the Google Doc process, and it was a little bit cumbersome for my students because some people would type over the word that they had just spent 5 minutes trying to sound out how to spell. So that was a bit more difficult for them. I would say, I've tried lots of other tools, but I keep coming back to those three: video conferencing and Twitter and blogging, and then making other things fit in with that, because those seem to be the most effective for what I do in my classroom.
Okay, I want to ask you another question, but it's a little bit off the topic of literacy. Um, you've worked really hard, and your own voice as an educator is out there. Maybe that was unintentional as well. That was kind of a collateral effect of the work you've done. How does it feel to have people who are fellow educators read your blog, and how does you might not even know how many people you mentor? You've built social capital. You've built a bit of a brand. What's your response to that?
Yeah, that was totally unintentional. The internet was pretty young when I started using these technologies, and it was sort of a side effect of it that here was somebody who was using blogging with very young students, and I was a novelty, and people started to talk about the things that I was doing and use me as an example, and that for me that led to, well, people say, well, why don't you come and tell us about that at a conference? And that was something I did not expect. And that's very gratifying. And I really enjoy that. It's something I think that I have something to contribute to say, look, young kids can use technologies to create and to be effective global citizens in very very good ways that help with literacy, which, as I said earlier, it's all what grade 1 is all about. Nobody wants to take time from their literacy to do the technology instruction, but they go hand in hand. And so that's been very gratifying. And yeah, what else can you say? I like it.
Okay, I want to respect your time, and I'm wondering, do you have any advice for my librarian, the folks who are new librarians here? They're going to be working with classroom teachers like you. What's your best tips for them?
I would say you first of all need to be sensitive to where every teacher's at, because even though once you've tasted the Kool-Aid, like I have, you want everybody to be involved in doing these things, but you have to be respectful of where people are at. It's important to support them and to offer these options and to say, is there something here you would like to try? To not try to start with a whole bunch of things, but would you like to just, I'll come in with my laptop and let's have one, I'll arrange the people that we're going to talk to, and would you just like to have one Skype call with another classroom? And I've done lots of those one-offs with other classrooms, and they've been really excited, just as my students have, to be participating in the call. And so start with that, and then maybe that can lead to other things. I suggest that because literacy, like, obviously speaking and listening are literacies, but the traditional literacy, the students don't have to be great writers to participate in that, and as they would with that or with Twitter. So, even in an early kindergarten room, you can still use Skype to find out about people around the world. So start small. Start with just something maybe that is just about speaking and listening, and then help them with it. Build that capacity for them to do it themselves. Come in as many times as they need you to feel comfortable doing that.
Great. That's exactly what I was hoping you'd say. Oh, that's wonderful. Kathy, if my students want to follow you on Twitter, what's your handle?
Kathy Cassidy.
Okay, so that'd be great. All right, well, I think you'll have some new followers from these new librarians, and I'm going to stop the broadcast and thank you so much for your time.
You're very welcome. It's a pleasure.